Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Joya Goodrum with the McMinnville Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate your attendance today, and I want to introduce Leslie Applegate. Leslie Applegate Lanzar, I'm sorry, with Recology. She's going to be telling us today about what goes where when it comes to recycling. So I'm going to mute everybody and I'll turn it over to you, Leslie. You may have to unmute yourself. And let me just mute everybody, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Hi. Okay, well, first, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And so I am Leslie Applegate Lanzar, but Lanzar is the name I go by. Applegate Lanzar is the official name. I am a waste zero specialist over at Recology Western Oregon. What that means is I go out to the community and I educate anywhere from preschool all the way up to, think, I want to say he was a little over 100 years old. So I educate all kinds. And I also go to businesses and I let people know about what you can't recycle. I do audits. Today, though, I'm going to focus on what goes where. Before I forget, I'm also a chamber ambassador. Thank you, chamber. I haven't been on site as much just due to, the COVID restrictions, but hopefully that'll all change soon. So again, thank you so much for being here. So first, though, I wanted to, can everyone see the slides?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. So what I'm going to do, just kind of give you a brief overview. I'm going to go over who Recology is, a quick background, the services that are available, and I'm going to focus mainly on in-town in McMinnville. When I say services, I'm talking specifically about the carts we have available. But so just keep in mind that when I'm going over this, when I say talk about the carts, it is McMinnville specific. But again, the recycle cart, what goes and does not go in there is the same for all Recology areas up here in Oregon. I'm also, after that, I'm going to go over what goes where, what can and cannot be recycled. And that also will go over contamination. And contamination just means items that, you put in recycle that should not be in recycling. I'm going to quickly go over the importance of reduce and reuse. And I'm going to touch on a little bit about household hazardous waste, some items that we have questions on. And then at the end, if you have any questions, I'm here. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, who we are. So Recology Western Oregon. We are an employee-owned company, and we own garbage. So we're a garbage recycling and compost hauler serving Northwest Oregon. Recology itself, we are anywhere from San Francisco all the way up to Seattle. Again, employee owned. I love it. It's really great. We are in the business of resource recovery. We are not in the business of landfills. So we focus on what we say is doing the right thing to help capture as much of that material, divert it from going to the landfill, and doing our best to take care of the planet. We have compost facilities here in Oregon. We have one right here in McMinnville. We have two larger ones. One is in Almsville, so down by Salem, and then North Plains. I spent quite a bit of time in North Plains this summer, so it was really nice. We also have transfer stations in McMinnville. There is a transfer station. It's at 2200 Orchard Avenue, right off of Lafayette. And we also waste reduction educators, and that's me. So, it's great that we recycle, but people need to know what can you recycle, what do you throw in the garbage. And Recology's, they focus a lot on being out in the community, education, and so this is my job. So just so you know, I'm here for you. If you have any questions, you could go to recology.com. I I'm Leslie Lanzar. You could reach out to me. But Recology, we're here for the community. We're here for everyone. And so let's see if I could get this going some more. So again, the 4-bin system. So when I say in some areas, again, this specifically is for in town McMinnville, within the city limits. We have 4 carts. They are the garbage cart. So that's the one on the far left. The next with the red cart, the red lid is commingle, which is recycle. The glass cart, the blue one, and compost. For that, we should really say yard debris. So garbage, commingle, glass, yard debris. So that's the 4 carts. Not all areas have all 4 carts, but in town McMinnville, they do. Let me page down here. So just a quick overview. A lot of times people ask like, hey, Recology, do you sort the material? No. What happens is, and this is going to focus on residential materials. So in other words, when you put your garbage cart and your recycle cart out to the curb, that's what when I say residential. So it's just, that's what I'm referring to. So the trucks come by to the curb and we pick up your recycling. The trucks then go to the McMinnville transfer station over there on Orchard Avenue. They drop it all off from the red carts. Everything in the red carts, your residential, if you look at that arrow going down in the bright red, it says commingle Pioneer Recycling. That we do not, we're not sorting on site. It goes into large semi trucks. We then take it to Pioneer Recycling. They're a MRF, which is a Material Recovery Facility, MRF. From there, that's where they're going to sort a lot of the material. And when I go into why certain items can't be in the red commingle carts, just keep in mind, I'm referring mainly, when I say the MRF, that's where they're actually sorting it. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The metals, it says Portland, cardboard goes to Longview, glass goes to Portland. So the glass for residential, when the truck comes by, picks up the glass, again, glass is separate, does not go in the commingle cart. We bring it into the transfer station, we load that up, and we send it directly to Portland. So that is being processed in Portland. Cardboard, now, when we say cardboard and metal, that is commercial. So if you go to like big businesses, like the furniture stores, they have a lot of cardboard. So we bring that in, it's separate from the residential, so separate from your red carts. Bring it in, and then we send that to Longview, and again, it's processed locally. Same with metals. Metal does, they bring it in large amounts, we send it directly, and I think that's to Portland, and they process it there. So just to keep in mind, we're hauling the material and getting it to the destination, but we're not doing the sorting on site. And before I forget, whatbin.com. So if we get through this and you're still a little confused, you could go to whatbin.com and you could find out, does it go, or where does it go? You'll want to be sure that you click on Yamhill County, because whatbin.com does cover all of Recology. So everywhere from San Francisco to Seattle, and some areas are a little different. And I'll get into that in a little bit later. So before we get going about specifics, these are the common questions that normally come up, and I just wanted to address them first and kind of get that out of the way. And I'll be honest, a lot of these I was unsure of. I didn't know until I got this position. So we're all kind of learning together. So don't feel bad if you don't know some of this. This is what I do for a living, and I wasn't even sure about it at first. So how clean is clean? If you look at that, the picture of the peanut butter tub, personally, I would say that is not clean enough. We would ask that you soak it, try to get out as much of the contents of the food as possible. The reason why is, again, when it goes to the MRF, again, the Material Recovery Facility, they're going to sort it, and they put them in bales. So like that type of material, about 2,000 pounds worth in these big old square cubes in these bales, and they don't wash it. So when it goes through there, they're smushing it all together. And then, excuse me. So, it might have been sitting, by the time it gets all baled, maybe it's been, we'll just say 2 weeks by the time from you putting it in your recycle cart to being baled. From there, a large majority of the plastic currently is being sent overseas. So let's say it takes another couple of months. So you can imagine, even if it was a yogurt cup and you had a tiny teaspoon of yogurt, imagine 2,000 pounds of yogurt cups with just a little bit of yogurt. In a couple months, it's going to have germs, not smell very good. So that's why we do ask to please clean it, just so when it gets to the processing plant, when they make it into another material, so it doesn't have the germs. And so it's really a safety reason. What do the numbers mean on plastic bottles? Actually, I'm going to skip one. So what about lids on plastic bottles? We'll go to that first. Lids do not go into the recycle cart. And I'll probably cover this again. The reason why, again, when it goes to the material recovery facility, they literally have tons and tons of material that are going on these conveyor belts. And anything that is smaller than, let's say, a tennis ball can fall in between into the conveyor belt, and it could just stop the whole line, which is a hazard for the workers. So because of that, we ask no lids. Because they can come off in the process. And numbers on plastic. So just because there's a number on the plastic does not mean you can recycle it. The numbers, that is for the chemistry world. So like polyethylene is number one, high density polyethylene, low density polystyrene. So those numbers, it is a bit misleading because you see the little chasing arrows and you think, hey, you could recycle it. Unfortunately, that is not true. And we're going to get into this. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So plastic is the one that we have the most questions about. And a lot of people, say, things are changing. It's really confusing. And things have definitely changed in the last, 3 years. One thing to keep in mind, though, for the most part, here in McMinnville, it has been steady. But when you're hearing information on the news, perhaps they'll say a certain type of plastic or a certain type of cardboard isn't accepted. They might be speaking specifically for the Portland area or for another area. Recology, because we are up and down the West Coast and we are focused on resource recovery, we only do business with the MRFs, the material recovery facilities, and the vendors that will actually take that material and recycle it. We do not want it to end up in the landfill. So when we say it's a material that can be recycled, it'll get to the destination and it will get recycled. Now, just to let you know, if you throw something in there, garbage or an item that's not recyclable, of course that won't be recycled. So it's just the correct material. So again, this information we're going over, it's good for all of McMinnville and also this one here, the surrounding areas for the red carts. So plastic, we do not sort the material according to the number, the resin code. What we do is, if you look on the right, we go by the shape and the size. So only rigid bottles, jugs, jars, and oh heavens, sorry, or tubs are accepted. They have to be 6 ounces or larger. So pretty much the smallest item that you could have right now are the yogurt cups. So again, imagine like a tennis ball. Anything smaller than that does have to go, unfortunately, in the garbage because there's so much material on the conveyor belt. It'll just get stuck in there. We do ask they're empty, clean, and dry, and to place any loose items in the garbage. So if you look on here, one thing I want to point out before I forget, you see that the flower pot, that the large pot back there, it is, if you were to hold it in your hands, it's that strong type plastic. It's rigid. So if you the smaller ones, you squish, the ones you squish, if they don't go back in shape or if they make that crinkly sound, that's not a rigid one. So pretty much about the only type of flower pot are the ones that are pictured here. All the others, unfortunately, either are too small or they're made of the flimsy plastic. Why we say rigid plastic, just to let you know, actually, I'll go into that in the next slide. So all of the material up here, they're rigid. Again, when we say rigid, so imagine I really should have had props. I'm sorry. You go and you get a soda, in at a coffee place, and it's in a plastic. And if you were to squish it, it just stays in that position. So that's one way to do a test is this rigid? If it just crinkles and stays in that, it's not. And that means it's a low grade plastic. And it takes more energy to try to recycle that than it does to create a brand new plastic cup. So I hope that makes sense. So again, what you're seeing here is what we can recycle for plastic. And a lot of times, the best thing to go into is what can you not recycle? Kind of helps out, at least I found a lot more. So on this one here, all of these items we cannot recycle. Plastic bags we cannot recycle. I should say, we cannot put in the recycle cart. Plastic bags, a lot of times you can bring them into the transfer station. Sometimes they have them like in front of a Winco. So they can be recycled, but they do not go in your recycle cart. Hope that makes sense. All of, the one-time containers, those cups, to-go food, all of that, again, that is just the cheaper type of plastic. And when we say cheaper, again, in order to get all of to process it down, it takes more energy to recycle it than it does to make a new product. So it's just it's not really a good type of plastic. If that makes sense. So clamshells, plastic beverage cups. I'm trying to think. The trays, that you're going to put in the microwave from the deli, all of that goes in the garbage. Dorito bags, candy wrappers, Capri Suns, a lot of the wrap, all that goes in the garbage. Another that I've been seeing quite a bit of are the Amazon, the mailers, the little bubble mailers, and all of those also go in the garbage. So I do spend a lot of time on the plastic. The other is we could probably get through fairly quickly, but this is plastic. So please do, if you have questions, feel free to write that down. And at the end, I'll be more than happy to go over it. So again, just before we move on, just remember rigid bottles, jugs, jars, and tubs, they have to be 6 ounces or larger, no lids, and just place them loose in the recycle cart. Please do not bag your recycling. And again, we do not go according to the number. So paper and cardboard. So moving on. A lot of these are, pretty straightforward. We accept corrugated, the magazines. I do get a lot of questions. For example, if you see that jumbo elbow macaroni, there is like a plastic window in there. If you have time, it would be wonderful to take it out. But if you don't, it's okay if there's a little bit of plastic because in the process they're able to, because what they are doing actually with the cardboard is they're putting it in, it gets water and it gets soaked down, and it comes off of the cardboard. But some, if you have time, some people go through the envelopes and take the little window out. So if you're able to, that's great. And again, you just put all of this into your red recycle cart. Please do not put it in any bags, just put it in there loose. These items do not go in the cart. And I'll kind of go into explanation. So first is the frozen food. And oh, I get so many questions. Do this for a living, and still my kids ask me. So anything that goes in the freezer, we are unable to recycle that cardboard. The reason why, if you'll notice, like the Red Baron, it has like that coating on it. It's really shiny. that coating that they put on items that go in the freezer versus a macaroni and cheese like box is actually a different type of chemical. So it's more of a plastic, because in the freezer they have to have a coating that's going to be resistant to moisture and really cold temperatures. Because of that, because it is specifically, for, to resist against the moisture and the cold temperatures, when in the process of trying to recycle it, it won't break down as it should. So unfortunately, that does go into the garbage. The items up to the right of it, the to-go boxes, the cardboard cups, all of those have a wax coating. Again, it's to keep, you know, like the the moisture away from the cardboard part, so it doesn't just, you know, make a hole and all your drink goes out or your food fall out of the bottom. So again, because of that, we're unable to process it. We cannot recycle it, so it has to go in the garbage. The pizza box. So this one here, that's what we get actually the most phone calls about, with the couples calling in. Um, so if the cardboard, like this pizza box here, because there's oil is and there's food, that would not go into recycling. It would go into the garbage. But if you had time, if you were to rip that top part off, even there's a little bit of oil, you could place the top part of the pizza box into recycle, bottom part could go into the garbage. um, Moving on, the carton is called an aseptic. So there, for that, technically we are able to recycle it, but just to let you know, a few years ago, kind of to explain why we're unable to accept it now, uh, most about 95% of our plastic in aseptics was going to China, and that's where they had all the facilities to process it and make it into other material. What happened was the China did not, or they just stopped all of the importing of that type of material, and uh, and that was worldwide. So again, about 95% worldwide of all of this material was going to them. They said nope. And so there was an enormous amount of recycling, and there's just not many people that would accept it or even could accept it, because you have to, it takes a few years to start a big company uh, to process and recycle. With that being said, if you're looking for future businesses, this might be the business for you, because we definitely need processors. I mean, all over. Uh, but again, so aseptic, so like the milk cartons, there's just, we can't find a market for them. We can't. There's a two or three here in the States, but right now there's so much they can't accept it all. So unfortunately, at this point, that would have to go in the garbage. And it's not, the septics aren't just cardboard alone, but some of them have plastic in between. Some could have like aluminum foil. Just aseptics is what we call that. So that would go in the garbage. Hopefully that will change, but at this time, that's what we have to do. To the right, all of the fast food containers, again, it has that waxy coating, so that would all go into the garbage. So if you have any questions about that, please do write them down, and I'll be more than happy to answer them at the end of this. Metal. So metal, we do accept that. Steel and aluminum cans, clean aluminum trays, and empty aerosol cans. For the aerosol, the HHW means household hazardous waste. So nothing that is hazardous, and that includes spray paint. But if you have hairspray, shaving cream, those type of aerosol cans, you can put them in there. We ask that they are empty. Please do not put a hole in the bottom. I know years ago, people are instructed to puncture a hole. You don't want to do that, just for safety reasons. So again, if it's empty, it's not hazardous, absolutely, you can put that in there. Now for the metal, if you're unable to get that little plastic lid off, it's okay. Because metal, how they process it when it goes up to Portland, they are literally just melting everything down. So if there's a little bit of plastic, it'll just melt right off or burn up. We do ask that if we try to keep the metal as clean as possible for the processor. So if you are able to get those, the wrappers off, or the labels, excuse me, please take those off of there. I know there are certain communities where, they might have a more difficult time getting the label off. And I just let them know, as long as you could get the food, as long as it's cleaned out, it will be okay. But we do try to limit um, the labels on there just so we could get a nice clean product for the processor. Items that do not go in there. So if you look up top, that little tray. So if it was washed, if it was clean, absolutely, you could then put it in there. But if you have a tray and it's just dirty, has food on it, if you're unable to clean it out, it would go in the garbage again because we are sending up to the processor. It could take a few weeks. We want it to be as clean as possible. We don't want them to have to handle, a potentially like germs and mold. Not that they're going through each little thing, but again, it's just for like a safety reason. Aluminum foil, if it's clean, I would suggest putting it like in a ball. It has to be about a tennis ball size and make sure it's nice and tight, and that can go in there. All these small lids, again, because they're smaller than a tennis ball, they have more of a chance of going into the conveyor belt, stopping it, and that's a hazard to it. Another item is people do ask about the lids from cans. So for a while there, I actually, again, this is my job and I'm still learning. I thought if you took it off and you put it in the can and smushed it down, that would be acceptable. But when I went to the MRF, that's where they sort it, they asked that please do not do that. The reason why, if it's not attached to it, it could potentially still come out of there, like you're opening a can of soup, for example, those lids. It could potentially come out, and if it goes flying through the air and there's people around, it's a hazard. But one thing that you can do is say you're opening up a can of soup. If you were to open it, just leave some of it still attached, and then clean it out. And you can put it in there. It's still technically attached. That way, the lid can be recycled. It's not going to go flying off. And again, hazardous waste, the spray paint, that would not go in there. Hazardous material, though, it can be, we have 2 hazardous waste events a year. The one in spring is in Newburgh, and then fall is McMinnville. That's where you can take your hazardous waste. That could be LED light bulbs, batteries. You could drop those off for free. If you need to get rid of that in the beforehand, hazardous waste, there's one down in Salem and one in Portland, but I'll go over some more of the hazardous waste specific items here shortly. Glass bottles and jars. So the blue carts, you put your glass in there. Glass does not go into the red recycle. So if you're in an area, if you don't have that recycle cart, the blue glass recycle cart, sorry, I call them all recycle carts. If you don't have the glass cart, we do ask that if you can, when you're in the area, you could drop them off at a depot. But please do not put them in the commingle in the red cart. Again, it's just they break and people are sorting that by hand in addition to the machines. And so that's just a safety issue. Whereas if you put it in the blue glass cart, it's just strictly glass. It's not going to be sorted by hand by anyone. We do not count your wine bottles, so feel free to put in as many as you'd like. I actually had a lady ask very seriously, she's like, I want to recycle, but I'm afraid that the garbage driver is going to count my wine bottles. I'm like, no. It's all good. We're in wine country. We don't do that. But we do ask that the bottles are clean, empty, and if you can get the label off, a lot of them you can't. They're glued on there pretty good, so don't worry about that. You don't necessarily have to soak it overnight. But so this would include food grade items. So like ketchup bottles, beer bottles, but remember you could probably get 10 cents from those. And I'm all about saving money, but if you could technically still though put it in the glass. Baby food jars, all of those go into the blue cart. These items do not go in the glass. So again, when we say glass, we're talking like food grade. So a mason jar, something that you have in your kitchen and your pantry that had food in it. The the reason why, and they try to explain it to me, I guess, of course, there's different grades of glass, different types. They melt down differently. So right now, the only glass that is accepted again are the food grade ones, so like bottles, jars, those kind of items. So no mirrors, ceramics, glass from a window, all of that would go into the garbage. The light bulb on the left, that's just an old-fashioned light bulb. Just to let you know, they can go into the garbage. Now, if you have like a CDL, those type, they do not go in the garbage. That would be considered hazardous waste. So you could either hold on to them and wait until there's a hazardous waste event and take them to, or you could go to Salem, Portland, and then I know some places, Lowe's and Home Depot, they used to accept it, but I really don't want to speak for them just because things change. So if I would recommend reaching out to them because it may have changed just from last week. Um, but if you have any questions about that, please write it down and I'll be more than happy to answer it. Compost, if it grows, it goes. Again, we have a compost cart here in McMinnville. Pretty much if it grows out in your yard, grass, leaves, all that can go in there. We also accept raw veggies and fruits. So pretty much anything, like if you were to go out to your garden and pick it, or an apple from a tree, that kind of thing that's raw, absolutely, you could put it in there. And it just goes directly into the container. What does not go in the compost cart? Eggs, meat, any kind of food that was already cooked. The reason why, like in Portland, you're able to put those type of items in there. In Portland, sometimes you're able to put some of the items on the bottom, but it's a different type of compost system. So, and that could be like a whole other business series. But for in McMinnville, it's just like yard debris and raw fruits and veggies, no meats. One thing I do like to stress to people, a lot of times you're going to see products that say they're compostable, they're biodegradable plastics. Unfortunately, they still do not go into the yard debris cart. For example, like that plastic cup, they say biodegradable plastic. Technically, it's probably going to break down after a while, but is it beneficial? It usually just ends up melting, and it is like these little clumps of like plastic. And so the compost that we have, we are then selling a lot of times to farmers, and we want it to be organic, nutritious compost to put back on the land. Because again, we're trying to do what's best for the environment, and that's why we're composting it, making it into a really good product. Actually, have any of you seen the forks that are plastic looking, but they say that they're compostable? So a quick story about that. When I was working in North Plains, we wanted to test it and see, this is when they first came out, is it truly compostable? So we had a test plot. We ran it through the system, and North Plains is like, if you can compost it, that's where it's going to happen, because this is like industrial grade. It's like the best of the best. So we tried it there and went through the system. Other than, or then when we got it back, other than it being, like the little beat up and stuff, it didn't break down at all. We sent it through a couple other times. It did not break down. So just because it says it's compostable does not mean it can go into your yard debris cart. So that's, again, that I could talk for that for quite a while, but we don't have time for that. So we're going to move on. But again, if you have questions, please do write it down. I'm happy to answer them. Now on to contamination. So again, contamination are items that end up, for example, in the recycle part, but actually should be placed in the garbage. So we try to limit that as much as possible. This is just an example of some of the most frequent contamination that I've seen. So I do frequently audit the incoming material. Actually, I do this routinely, and these are the ones I see the most. And I do Recology, we post this in the newspaper. I try to do Facebook posts. It just kind of gets into why is it contamination, and is there a, where should it go? Is there something else we could do? And so that's you could kind of go over that a little bit if you'd like. Again, this is all items that we've spoke. Actually, the pet food bags. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. A lot of times the pet food bags, and not just the ones like up there that are glossy, like even for the horse feed, it looks like it's just paper. It's not. What it is there's actually a liner in between it. So because of that, all of those pet food bags, horse feed bags, all of those go into the garbage because it's not just strictly paper. So unfortunately, that would go in the garbage. So I wanted to point that out. And so this is kind of going into what we're seeing currently. We are seeing quite a bit of masks, gloves, and wipes, either littered on the ground or being placed in recycling. All of these items do need to be placed into the garbage. And just a reminder, this is not really our area, but I like to tell people when they say flushable wipes, please do not flush them. There's no such thing as a flushable wipe. Was it Clear Water Services or something? They spoke about this. They all just they just clog up the system, so they do go into the garbage. I'm just throwing that out there. And I like the little eyes, so I had to add that. Hand sanitizer, excuse me, and soap bottles. So we're using that quite a bit more. You can recycle the bottle as long as the material, either the soap or the sanitizer is out of there. As long as it's clean and dry. The pump and the lid, though, unfortunately, that would need to go in the garbage. So we ask that you just take the lid off. Make sure it's emptied. Again, if it was soap or hand sanitizer, it's clean. We don't really have to worry about mold and mildew. So just making sure it's empty is really what's important. And you could put the bottle in recycle, lid in the garbage. And so we focus on recycle, but again, Recology, we want to do what's right. And what is even more beneficial is reducing and reusing. And so we say reduce, reuse, recycle. We say it in order of importance. So reduce is the best thing you could do. So, if you have your choice, if you're able to reduce, please reduce. That helps the carbon footprint. You're not going to have a carbon footprint because you're just, for example, if someone says, hey, you want a plastic fork? And you say, no, I already have one right there. That what would have been garbage, you took that away, so you don't have to worry about it. Reuse, if you're unable to reduce, we then ask you to reuse. An example of that is a water bottle, taking that to work. There's actually a picture of a flip-flop that I take to schools, and they had an old flip-flop and they put it up on their bathroom, and they stuck it up on the wall, and it's their holder for magazines and newspapers. So it's pretty inventive. I didn't do that, but it was all the kids get a kick out of that. So, and then of course, third is recycle. So if you can't reduce or reuse, please then recycle. And these are just some items or some suggestions. And so that is the end of this. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Leslie.
Mhm.
That was interesting. I learned something.
Oh, good.
I learned a lot, actually.
Oh, good. So
Part
who
of
was
me was
right?
dying inside thinking, oh, I put that in the trash or I put that in the recycle. So it's good
Sorry.
to know. I love the fact that we can recycle aerosol cans because I
Mhm.
never know what to do with those. You're done with, shaving cream or something like that. There was
Mhm.
a question about pizza boxes.
Mhm.
And so it looks like someone responded to that about throw it in the garbage unless you can tear off the top where it's not greasy and
Mhm.
put it in recycle. Someone asked about should we crush our gallon milk jugs to reduce the size?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can, um, as long as they're clean and the lid is off, I do suggest that, just so you could get more recycling in there. Mhm.
And I had a question. I noticed on one of the slides you talked about
Mhm.
shredded paper. I
Oh. Mhm.
I remember there was a time when you could throw your shredded paper in and they said put it in a plastic bag. Then they said put it in a paper bag. And then I heard, oh, they won't
Mhm.
take it at all. I like to recycle shredded paper
Mhm.
because it seems like we should be doing that.
Mhm.
So what is the recommendation with regard to shredded paper?
Okay. So with that, again, I went to the source because I had questions. So I went to the MRF, again, the Material Recovery Facility, and they ultimately are the ones that would tell us can we or can't we. If you have shredded paper, I would strongly suggest you bringing it into the transfer station or one of the recycle depots and just empty it directly into the paper. The reason why, technically, you technically you could put shredded paper in a paper bag and then put it in your recycle bin. But what I saw at the MRF, again, I'm just gonna tell you what I saw is when it's going on that conveyor belt, I saw a lot of shredded paper on the ground. So it may not stay in that paper bag from point A to point B. So I, again, strongly suggest if please just bring that shredded paper and dump it directly in at the recycle depot into the paper. That way, and that paper is getting sent straight to the recycler. So you know it's going to get there.
Got it. And you don't recommend taping the bag down or anything like that because that's
Oh,
just
no,
adding more plastic, right? But we could
exactly.
take a paper bag full
Hmm.
of recycle
Hmm.
and dump it into the bin, or even throw the whole bag in the bin,
You mean with
paper bag with
for
the
the
shredded paper.
paper?
Yeah,
Oh, you'd want to staple it though. We suggest staples. That's what you want to use because in the process it will again, because they use the water and it all gets sorted out. But that you can do. Mhm.
okay. But don't put a paper bag with staples in it in the recycle bin. Take it over to the transfer station.
For shredded paper.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. Well, if you're taking it to the transfer station, you could have paper and whatever because you're just gonna, or excuse me, you're gonna have the shredded paper, um, and you could even have it in a plastic bag because you're gonna empty it out
Got
into the large bin. Does that make sense? And then if you have shredded paper and you're unable to get to the recycle depot, you can put them in a paper bag,
okay.
staple them shut, and then place it into the red recycle cart.
Love it. Thank you.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Mhm.
Thank you. That helps alert
Okay.
a lot.
Thanks.
Rhonda said she's learned a lot not to add the frozen food boxes.
Hmm.
I've done that as well, thinking
Hmm.
it's a box, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And of course, no more Amazon bubble wrap. So what do you do
Yeah.
with bubble wrap? Save it for the next time you move.
Yeah. Exactly. Reuse as much as you can because that does actually go a long ways. Hmm.
Are there any other questions? This has been so incredibly interesting and informative. Oh, and thank you for explaining what HHW was.
Oh, yep.
I saw that on one of the earlier slides and I thought, oh, I don't know what that is. So that's household hazardous waste.
Hmm.
So spray cans, but
Hmm.
hairspray is okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hairspray is okay.
And what else? Oh, and shampoo containers that come in like squeezable soft things, those should be thrown out as well, right? Those we can't recycle.
Most shampoo containers, I should say, you could squeeze them, but they don't just stay in place. So that is more rigid, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Kind of like the butter, the tubs, you could squeeze it, but it's going to bounce right back into place.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't crinkle and stuff.
That's a really good test, actually.
Yeah.
For it. So that was very helpful as well.
Oh,
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I don't see any other questions, which is, well, I guess you've covered everything and you
Oh,
did
good.
so well. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. One last thing. So if we wanted more information, we could go look at whatbin.com,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
We could call your office. What's the number?
503-472-3176. We have
4176. Okay.
yeah, we have been getting quite a few phone calls. So really the best way to reach us is rwoinfo@recology.com. So it's RWOINFO at Recology is RECOLOGY.com.
Excellent. That is great. That's
Oh, great.
helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. With no other questions coming in that I can see, Leslie, you are amazing and a rock star.
Thank you.
We appreciate this. Was so incredibly informative. I learned a lot. I know everyone else did. Maybe that's why there were no questions, because everyone learned something today. And this was fantastic and really appreciate. And also, I just want to point out over here, right here, Recology is one of the sponsors for our business support series. So appreciate you and everything that you do in our community.
Thank you.
And thanks to the thanks to Carl and all of the team over there for all you do, because our society would not go on without you.
Oh, well, we appreciate every single one of you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, for listening and learning and just being there for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Stay well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're working on our next group of business support series, so keep an eye out for emails and information from us. We appreciate all of you being here today. Leslie, wishing you all the best and stay well. Everyone stay safe and well out there, and thank you. And we'll catch up with you soon.